Whispers of shock and horror echoed through the alien classroom as the teenage human transfer student revealed the nightmarish horrors of his homeworld ecosystem. Johnny Porter was the first human ever admitted to the prestigious Krenim Galactic Academy on the planet Zenith, an advanced institute of learning normally restricted to the brightest Krenim minds and closed to outsiders. But as humanity took its first tentative steps into the stars, the Academy had opened its doors to this single teenaged human representative in a spirit of interspecies cultural exchange. Johnny sat in his first xenobiology class, waiting his turn as each alien student shared an interesting fact about their native ecosystem, per the instructor's request. Most revealed details that, while fascinating, were still mundane compared to what Johnny knew of Earth. He rubbed his hands together, eager to take his turn. When the teacher, an elderly Krenim professor named Hector, finally called on him, Johnny grinned. "Well, sir, on Earth we have animals called tigers, giant predatory cats that can grow up to 11 feet long and reach 800 pounds. The class fell silent. Hector blinked his 3 eyes. 800 pounds? Surely you mean 80? No, sir, 800 pounds. Bigger than everyone in this room combined, and that's just one of our deadly predators. We've also got lions, bears, 1,000-pound great white sharks, crocodiles." Johnny went on to describe Earth's terrifying array of apex predators that could easily kill a human. He shared how these beasts maim and eat humans regularly, but that humans still interact with them for sport and entertainment, through safaris and shark diving. The Krenim students looked increasingly nauseated, since the worst predator on Zenith was an 8-pound fox-like scavenger. "Oh, and we've also got the most venomous creatures," Johnny continued casually. "The box jellyfish has a sting so painful that victims beg for death, and a single drop can kill 60 adult humans. Then there's the most toxic poison on Earth, botulinum. An amount the size of a grain of sand could kill hundreds of thousands." The class was now regarding Johnny with a mix of horror and disbelief. As a finishing move, he added, "And then there's Australia, which has 21 of the 25 most venomous snakes on Earth, plus the most venomous spider, octopus, fish, and snail. Basically everything in Australia wants to kill you." Johnny looked around at his classmates' expressions of pure, slack-jawed shock and felt a twinge of patriotic pride. He hadn't even gotten to parasites, flash floods, or tornadoes yet. After class, a deeply shaken Professor Hector pulled Johnny aside. "Listen, if even half of what you said is true, it could completely upend my doctoral thesis on environmental influences in evolution. I need to know more." As Johnny walked to his next class, he noticed clusters of Krenim students whispering and pointing at him. It seemed word of his casual HFY Stories was spreading like wildfire. By the end of the day, the whole academy was abuzz about the new teenage Hellworlder and his horror stories. Johnny smiled to himself, realizing his graphic tales of Earth's terrors might forever change how this alien civilization saw and interacted with humanity. Hopefully they'd be too scared to ever even think of messing with the HellWorld and its people. Earth was humanity's realm, and they had earned it through millennia of facing down fangs, stingers, and claws. These Krenim wouldn't last a day there. But if aliens found out the truth and reacted with fear rather than curiosity and wonder, would they still welcome humans into the galactic community with open arms, or would they shun the Deathworlders out of terror? As Johnny headed to his next class, he pondered this and other implications of being humanity's sole representative on an alien world. The fate of human-alien relations might come down to him alone. The next day, as Johnny walked into the Academy's vast atrium, he found himself surrounded by a group of wide-eyed Krenim students. At their center stood Zorax, the Academy's star pupil, his sleek blue scales glinting under the skylights. "Johnny!" Zorax called out, his voice tinged with excitement. "We were hoping you could share more about Earth's creatures. Your stories yesterday were intense." Johnny grinned, happy to oblige. "Sure thing, Zorax. Gather round, everyone." The students clustered closer, their expressions a mix of fascination and trepidation. "One time I was hiking in the Sonoran Desert," Johnny began, his eyes gleaming with the memory. "I was about to step over a log when I heard this weird buzzing sound. I looked down and there it was, a rattlesnake, coiled up and ready to strike." The Krenim students gasped, a few even taking a step back. "What did you do?" Zorax asked, his voice hushed. "I froze," Johnny said. "Stayed real still. The snake and I just stared at each other for a bit. Then real slow, I backed away until I was out of striking range." "Incredible," whispered a petite female student. "I would have just fainted on the spot." Johnny chuckled. "That's not even the scariest encounter I've had. Once, when my family was camping in Yosemite, a black bear wandered right into our campsite." The students' eyes widened further, a few murmuring prayers to their deities. "It was huge, probably 500 pounds, Johnny continued. "My dad grabbed a pot and started banging it, yelling at the bear. I joined in, waving my arms and hollering. Eventually, the bear turned tail and ran off." Zorax shook his head, amazement etched on his angular features. "I can't fathom facing such beasts. What weapons do your people use against them? Surely you've developed potent defenses." "I mean, we have guns and bear spray," Johnny shrugged. "But mostly, we just try to avoid dangerous animals, learn their habits, watch for signs. If you're careful and prepared, you can minimize the risks." "But why venture into the wild at all?" asked a tall, gangly student. "Why not just stay safe in your cities?" Johnny paused, considering. "For us, nature isn't something to hide from. It's a part of us, facing its challenges, testing our limits. It's how we grow. It's in our blood." The Krenim students fell silent, absorbing this. Zorax stepped forward, placing a hand on Johnny's shoulder. "You're a braver species than we realized," he said solemnly. "We could learn much from you." Over the next few weeks, Johnny found himself spending more and more time with Zorax's Xenozoology Club. He shared story after story of Earth's ecosystems and the creatures within them. In turn, the Krenim students taught him about the comparatively tame wildlife of their own worlds. Through Johnny's tales, perceptions began to shift. No longer did the Krenim see humans as fragile oddities, but as tenacious survivors, shaped by the crucible of their perilous homeworld. But not everyone was thrilled with this new perspective. Professor Xyloth, a stodgy, conservative instructor, cornered Johnny one afternoon, his face pinched with disapproval. "You're filling these impressionable youngsters' heads with dangerous notions," Xyloth sniffed, "glorifying your primitive death world, making them question our civilized ways. It's irresponsible." Other like-minded faculty members joined Xyloth's chorus of condemnation. They argued that Johnny's presence was disruptive, that he would taint the Krenim with his barbaric human outlook. Tensions simmered as the academy became divided. Johnny's supporters saw him as a pioneer, forging bonds between species. His detractors viewed him as a corrupting influence, a liability to be contained. As the debate raged on, Johnny tried to focus on his studies and his growing friendships. But he couldn't shake the feeling that some pivotal event was looming on the horizon, a moment that would define his place among the Krenim and shape the future of human-alien relations. That moment arrived sooner than expected, during a routine field trip to the nearby wilds of Zenith. As Johnny and his classmates trekked through the lavender underbrush, none could predict the crisis that was about to unfold, an incident that would put Johnny's death world skills to the ultimate test and decide his fate on this alien world. The Academy's Xenozoology Club buzzed with excitement as they boarded the sleek hover ship bound for Zenith's lush rainforests. Johnny sat near the back, surrounded by his Krenim classmates. Professor Ector stood at the front, his three eyes scanning the group warily. As they touched down in a small clearing, the alien jungle loomed before them, a riot of purple and blue foliage under Zenith's twin suns. The Krenim students chattered excitedly, pointing out vibrant creatures flitting through the canopy. "Look, a tree grasper!" exclaimed Zorax, gesturing to a fluffy creature with long, prehensile limbs wrapped around a branch. "And there, a sky glider!" Another student pointed as a gossamer-winged creature floated by on the breeze. Johnny nodded politely, trying to share in their wonder. but compared to Earth's biodiversity, this alien ecosystem seemed almost quaint. As they trekked deeper into the forest, Johnny's gaze fell on an unassuming shrub with dark leaves. "Hey, that kind of looks like nightshade," he remarked casually. "On Earth, plants like that are often super toxic. Eating a few berries could kill you." The students closest to Johnny recoiled from the plant, eyes wide. "You mean, your world has deadly poison just growing wild?" one asked incredulously. Johnny shrugged. "Sure, tons of plants are toxic. You learn which ones to avoid." Hector frowned but said nothing as they pressed on. Suddenly, Johnny froze, holding up a hand to halt the group. "Look there," he whispered, pointing to movement in the underbrush. A long, segmented creature slithered into view, its iridescent scales glinting. "Don't worry, that's just a harmless glideworm," Hector assured the group. "Huh, looks a lot like some of our deadliest snakes," Johnny mused. "Like the Bushmaster. Its venom can kill you in hours. Or the black mamba, one bite, and you're dead in 20 minutes. Several students swooned at his matter-of-fact description of such lethal creatures. Others edged away from the alien snake, eyeing it with newfound terror. As they reached a shallow stream, the Krenim eagerly splashed in the crystal-clear water. Johnny hung back. "What's wrong?" Zorax asked. "Aren't you hot?" Johnny nodded. "Yeah, but on Earth, even the cleanest-looking water can harbor all kinds of nasty microbes. Brain-eating amoebas, flesh-eating bacteria, parasites that cause explosive diarrhea for weeks." The students scrambled out of the stream, shaking off droplets in panic. "How do you even survive on such a world?" one asked, horrified. Johnny shrugged. "You adapt. Learn to be careful." As the group stopped for a meal break, Johnny watched his classmates closely as they unpacked local fruits and tubers. "Wait!" he cried as one student raised an unfamiliar tuber to his mouth. Johnny smacked it away. "You can't just eat random plants. What if it's toxic?" "But it's a common snack," the bewildered student protested. "Well, on Earth, some of the deadliest toxins come from innocent-looking plants and mushrooms," Johnny explained. "I won't let your first contact with humans end in death by alien tuber." Finally, Hector had enough. "Mr. Porter," he snapped, "that is quite enough of your constant morbid warnings. You're traumatizing your fellow students." Johnny bristled. "I'm just trying to share important survival knowledge." "Survival knowledge?" Hector scoffed. "For what purpose? We have no intention of ever setting foot on your nightmarish death world." "Fine," Johnny shot back. "But what if humans visit your worlds? My warnings could save lives." Hector's scales flushed dark with anger. "After hearing your gruesome tales, I can assure you that no civilized society would ever allow such dangerous savages to join our galactic community." As Johnny and Hector's shouting match escalated, the rest of the students huddled together fearfully, whispering among themselves. The field trip was cut short as they boarded the hover ship in tense silence, the Krenim now eyeing Johnny with a mixture of fear and revulsion. Johnny slumped in his seat, realizing too late that his well-intentioned warnings may have done irreparable damage to human-alien relations. As the ship lifted off, he wondered if there was any way to salvage the situation. Johnny trudged into the headmaster's office, his stomach in knots. Hector stood there, scales flushed dark with anger. "This human is a menace," Hector hissed. "He's traumatized half the student body with his ghastly tales. I demand his immediate expulsion." The headmaster's 3 eyes blinked slowly as he considered. "Perhaps there's another solution," he mused. "Johnny, you'll work alone in the xenobotany lab. Consider it probation." Johnny nodded, relieved but chastened. For days he threw himself into analyzing alien plant specimens. No more horror stories, just meticulous documentation of leaf structures, chemical compositions, growth patterns. He peered through microscopes, ran samples through scanners, cross-checked galactic databases. Slowly his reputation began to shift. Word spread of the medicinal compounds he'd isolated from a dozen different species. Then came the day he opened a sealed container from an unexplored world. As the lid lifted, revealing a leafy shrub with clusters of white flowers, Johnny froze. His blood ran cold as memories flooded back. Childhood camping trips gone wrong. Agonizing rashes that lasted for weeks. "No way," he breathed. "It can't be." But every instinct screamed danger. He slammed the lid shut and hit the quarantine alarm. Minutes later, Hector burst in. "What's the meaning of this?" the professor demanded. "Sir, we may have a serious problem," Johnny said. "This plant, it's nearly identical to poison ivy from Earth. If it's even half as toxic, we're in trouble." Hector scoffed. "Surely you're overreacting again." "I'm not," Johnny insisted. "Poison ivy causes horrific blistering rashes. The oils can spread just from touching contaminated clothes or tools. If you breathe in smoke from burning it, your throat could swell shut." He described angry red welts, skin bubbling and oozing clear fluid, the maddening itch that could drive a person to claw their own flesh raw. Hector's skepticism faded to alarm. "Perhaps we should take precautions," he conceded. They called in a hazmat team. Johnny and Hector watched from behind a force field as figures in sealed suits carefully extracted samples. Hours later, preliminary results confirmed Johnny's fears. The alien plant contained urushiol-like compounds that could cause severe dermal reactions. Alarms blared throughout the academy. Students and staff lined up for decontamination scans. Maintenance crews in protective gear scoured every inch of the campus for stray leaves or pollen. In the midst of the chaos, the headmaster pulled Johnny aside. "Your quick thinking may have averted disaster," he said. "It seems we've underestimated the value of your unique experiences." Johnny's probation was lifted. Moreover, the academy was creating a new course, Earth Hazards and Survival, with Johnny as the instructor. As he prepared for his first lecture, Johnny felt a mix of pride and trepidation. He had a chance to bridge the gap between worlds, to help the Krenim understand humanity's hard-won resilience. But he'd have to choose his words carefully. After all, there was still so much to... Johnny stood at the front of the packed lecture hall, his eyes scanning the eager faces of students from every year and discipline. The room buzzed with anticipation. He took a deep breath and began. "Welcome to Earth Hazards and Survival. This isn't your typical xenobiology course. We'll be exploring the brutal realities of life on my homeworld." He tapped a hollow screen and vivid images flickered to life. Raging wildfires consumed entire forests. Massive tornadoes ripped through towns. Floods swallowed cities whole. "These are just some of the natural disasters we face," Johnny explained. "And that's before we get to the wildlife." The screen shifted to showcase Earth's apex predators. Lions with blood-stained maws. Great white sharks breaching the ocean's surface. Grizzly bears standing tall on hind legs. Many students gasped. One fainted. Johnny pressed on, detailing survival strategies for each threat. He demonstrated how to construct emergency shelters, find potable water, and avoid becoming prey. As the weeks passed, the initial shock wore off. Students began to appreciate Johnny's frank approach and the vital skills they were gaining. They eagerly participated in simulations, from earthquake response drills to mock animal attacks. Not everyone approved, however. A group of conservative faculty members cornered Johnny after class one day. "This savagery has no place in our curriculum," Professor Zyloth hissed. "You're undoing centuries of Krenim enlightenment." Johnny stood his ground. Knowledge is power. These skills could save lives. The debate raged on, but Johnny's classes only grew more popular. One day, during a Level 5 wilderness survival scenario, Johnny unveiled a special surprise. He opened a sealed container, releasing dozens of small, dark shapes onto the classroom floor. "These are non-toxic replicas of some of Earth's most venomous spiders," he announced calmly. Chaos erupted. Students scrambled onto desks, screaming as the arachnids skittered about. Johnny raised his hands for silence. "Remain calm. I'll demonstrate how to safely remove these threats from your shelter." He deftly captured a Brazilian wandering spider replica, explaining proper handling techniques. Next, he showed how to extract a Sydney funnel web from a boot without risking a bite. As the students watched in awe, one voice cut through the silence. "This is ridiculous." Carrick, a brash upperclassman, stepped forward. "You expect us to believe your world is truly this dangerous? These must be exaggerations." Johnny's eyes narrowed. "I assure you the dangers are very real." Carrick scoffed. "I'll prove it's all talk." He strode towards the nearest spider, reaching out to grab it. "Carrick, don't—" Johnny lunged to intervene, but it was too late. The synthetic spider's fangs pierced Carrick's skin. He froze, then collapsed to the floor, completely paralyzed but fully conscious. Johnny knelt beside the stricken student. On Earth, a real funnel web's venom could kill a child in 15 minutes. This is just a harmless paralytic, but the lesson stands. In a real encounter, you'd be dead. He administered the antidote, and Carrick slowly regained movement. The humbled student locked eyes with Johnny. I understand now. Please teach me more." From that day forward, the class approached Johnny's lessons with newfound respect and dedication. They absorbed every scrap of knowledge about Earth's myriad threats, from toxic plants to natural disasters. Word of Johnny's intense training spread. Soon, elite scout teams and explorers sought his expertise for first contact missions on harsh alien worlds. Even the Krenim Expeditionary Forces recruited Johnny as a consultant. He found himself advising on hypothetical Earth invasion scenarios, helping them strategize against the planet's environmental hazards. "Your world's atmosphere alone would corrode our ships in days," one general marveled. "How do you survive there?" Johnny smiled wryly. "We adapt. It's what humans do best." As humanity's induction into the galactic community approached, attitudes shifted. Johnny's once shocking tales were now viewed as critical intelligence. However, a vocal minority still distrusted Earth's violent nature, fearing the influence of such a harsh world on Krenim society. For his senior survival class's final exam, Johnny orchestrated his most ambitious simulation yet. Students arrived to find the training grounds transformed into a post-apocalyptic hellscape. Smoke billowed from impact craters, and the air rang with recorded screams. "A meteor has struck," Johnny announced grimly. "Your task, triage the injured and navigate this hazardous landscape to reach the evacuation point." For hours, the cadets battled through challenges, treating radiation burns, avoiding toxic gas pockets, and rationing dwindling supplies. When it was over, they slumped to the ground, exhausted and shell-shocked. One student raised a trembling hand. "Professor Porter, do such catastrophic events happen often on Earth?" Johnny's face grew somber. "Mass extinction events have shaped our entire evolution, and that's not counting the human-made threats. For decades, we've lived under the shadow of potential nuclear annihilation." A stunned silence fell over the group. The full weight of humanity's struggle for survival sank in. Any lingering doubts about human resilience vanished, replaced by a mix of awe and grim respect. Weeks later, Johnny stood before a bulletin board, scanning the final applicant scores for galactic induction. His name topped the list, Earth's first official ambassador to the stars. He should have felt elated. Instead, a familiar heaviness settled in his chest. That night, he packed a small bag and slipped out of his quarters, leaving only a brief message behind. "I carry the hopes of Earth with me," it read, "but also its burdens. Some weights can never be shed, no matter how far we travel among the stars." As the first hints of dawn touched the alien sky, Johnny Porter vanished into the...
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.